Oh. Okay, so for gender, I'm going to create one male, two female, and obviously you could have made female to, you would, it doesn't matter.
3 preferences, blah, blah, blah.
Female prefer not to say or other, right?
Mhm.
So now, when you click here, it'll list those. And let's just show you, like, real quick, descriptives, frequencies. I'm going to take out everything and then put gender back in. And see it recognizes what I changed it to all numbers, but numbers are coded as what I just labeled them with. So it's there were 80 males, 104 females, 41% males. That doesn't add up. So apparently 5.6 people didn't say their gender. 11 cases where they didn't enter their gender. So you get the idea. You have to, if you don't put in these values for like these where you changed, so those little legends, as you call them.
So I get what you're saying. If you don't mind me trying, do you mind me trying to explain it?
Yeah, go ahead.
So where you had in the other screen, the back end, you could type in 1 bachelor's, 2 master's, 3 on the back end, correct? And it would change it on the front end.
Yeah, sort of. Okay, so something happened. I think it's my fault, honestly. These race and higher ed are missing now. I think if I push undo a few times, it will come back. Because what happened is I changed it to numeric
I was trying to tell
before.
you that.
Right. I didn't realize it would just, I thought it would give me an error and say, hey, we're not. So it undid, because I had to undo, but it undid the gender values that I had put in. So again, 1 male. And on the next study, just for equity, you really need to do females as 1 and males as 2.
For equity.
So the next study, you need the prefer not to say or non-gender conforming TGNC, transgender, non-gender conforming, they need to be 1 after that. Or if you want to be a little progressive about it, then you should really put them as 1 the first study. And then I'd say every other study put transgender, non-conforming.
Now, when you say every other study, what do you mean?
Every time you clean a data set, you put 1 together. Since you have the choice, yes, equity, but really what we want even more than equity is to be progressive and push those marginalized people, hold them up so they can see over the wall too, and really just put them as 1s, because they may not ever know that you put TGNC as 1 in your database, but you'll know it, and that will chip away at your implicit biases. And that's really what we want, is to get rid of the whiteness. So, so this would now be, it's still nominal. So you're gonna add in, obviously age doesn't need values. Age is just age. A lot of these are just what they are. But honestly, there are a lot of these that we changed
Mm-hmm.
from 1 to 6, right? But the 1 meant something. It had words attached to it. It was strongly
Strongly
disagree or something.
Yep. Yep.
You're going to want to put that, and that's something you can copy paste
Oh, cool.
many rows.
All the way down. Gotcha.
And I'm sorry, I totally interrupted you when you were going to tell me what you thought we should do here for race.
Oh, no. I was saying what I was trying to tell you earlier, that you realized when we went back to the front and saw that the higher ed and race went away. That's what I was trying to talk about. You caught it, so it was nothing.
Okay. Race, once you change it to numbers, you change this to numeric, and you enter the values. Another thing that happens here, once you do enter the values, you can switch back and forth. And I'll show you what I mean. So the only one we've really done properly is gender. This is called value labels. And I want you to watch the gender column.
Female, male. I like that. So if you ever forget, you'll know.
You know, yeah. So it just shows you what is underneath the numbers. You know, what the numbers stand for, basically. So this is the way I do every database. I'm not saying it's the perfect right way. It's just the way I know how.
That's the best way to me.
I don't know. But it seems to be working. Oh, one other thing before we go, look for spurts of empty spaces. But at the same time, what I should be doing, and this will take a minute. So 1522666. All right, you just want to make sure that there's variability. So I'm seeing a lot of 6s, but them agreeing with themselves on similar items is not strange, you know. So assuming similar items, you could always look at 2 items. Let's say this says depressed and this says happy. Well, one should be the opposite of the other, right? Basically.
Right.
Depressed should be high if happy is low, and vice versa.
Right.
You can look at that to check to see people, are they really paying attention as they answer your survey? If they're not, then you consider throwing out their data. The other thing is, if you see any weird patterns, any Christmas trees, like 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This one looks pretty good, but you're going to want to do this on every row.
Right.
So plan a decent afternoon, and by decent I mean
A day.
not happy afternoon. But this can be pretty fast. If children were smarter, you might be able to pay them to do it, but I just wouldn't trust them to be conscientious about making sure. So it's really easy to see there aren't a lot of blank spots. And that's really fantastic. I see a random blank spot here. Another way you could do this, honestly, for blank spots is I mean, there's several things you can do just with analyses, descriptive analyses. So you could do frequencies of, what is this called? Friend, and I don't even remember what that meant. I'm trying to find it. Tell me if you see it.
Hold on.
Hold on. Here. All right, so we could run statistics on this and see how many we're missing. Does that make sense?
Yes. So 185 people had valid data, but 11 of them had missing information.
Right, you could do that technically for everything all at once. You could, I don't remember where this was, here. So you could run all these at once and sort of see how many missing. And it unfortunately is not going to give you person by person to do it this way. This just created a ton of tables, honestly. But
Yeah.
So missing 11, anything highly over 11, you really want to, I mean, 11 seems to be the standard. So here's 12. No big
12.
deal. It means somebody skipped one there. I don't know what the
Yeah.
11 are.
I did see that 12. There was one person in one of those columns that I saw you
12.
doing.
There's another 12, you know, no big deal with 12, 13, 14. It's just really, if you see, and you could see this, it's almost sort of like, think we're going from one column here to the next column, the next column. And if we see that, so this is 12, this is 12, this is 12, when we look back and see, oh, well, it's the same person, keep skipping 3 columns in a row. Well, that's the person that may not be paying attention. They could have skipped a whole section. I can just glance through this and tell you, I'm not seeing anybody skipping.
I did. There's one person who skipped a lot, but that's where he said, that's where they, remember they dropped out and they said that this survey was too detailed and long for me under the comments.
They didn't skip that many. I looked, they skipped about 7 at the end of the survey. And they said, I didn't realize the survey was going to be so long. And I was like, well, they only gave up 7 of the answers, which isn't bad at all. And like, okay, no, it's more than 7 if it's this person.
2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12.
So 15 answers. You've got to wonder, okay, is the data still worth keeping? I would say probably yes. It just depends on which questions they didn't fill out. So these questions are all in groups. Remember, they came from instruments, and they're probably going to be averaged together based on the instrument they came from. So you're going to actually create, compute a variable, and I don't remember the names of them, but let's say 4 questions came from one instrument. We're going to start with, we could use the real thing, but we're going to start
goal
with
success.
Never
mind, go ahead. More stress, you can do that one if you want. I'm more stressed out. Yeah.
Okay, more stress. And you got to also, one thing before you even start doing this, are any of them reverse coded? In other words, were any of the items asked in a way that compared to the other items on the instrument, they are polarly different. In other words, if all the other items were worded in a way that if you answer 5, 6, 4, you're in agreement, you're high on whatever that is. And then they ask a question, they're asking questions like, do you like pizza? Do you like pasta? Do you like bread with butter? I'm thinking of Italian food. But then they ask the question, the fourth question is, do you prefer to avoid carbohydrates? Okay, well, that answer should, if they know what they're eating, if they know what's actually in it, a lot of
They
that
would
Italian
say
food, and
they would give a 1.
that would be a 1 if the rest were 6s. And so you
Correct.
flip that 1 to become a 6. You'd
So
make
we
a,
didn't do that. I remember we didn't do that on
did
any
we
of our.
it should have been reverse scored. And that's one thing you should do very soon, before you start doing any of this. But let's say you've changed any reverse scored items.
Mhm.
Okay, I don't know an example, but put it on your list to ask me about reverse scored items if you want. Okay, do you have a list?
Yes.
Okay. And also ask me about creating variables.
Come on, don't spell it wrong. You can send this video to me, right?
So if we were reverse scoring journal field, let's say it was a revert, in other words, it was worded in the opposite direction to the other items that it's related to.
Mm-hmm.
And we would recode into different variables. I want to keep the original. Where is it? Journal. Could have picked anything. It really doesn't matter.
I had access to journals that
So
are within my field.
I just need journal field R, capital R, journal field R. I forget. All right, so it's going to change this. Now, what we're going to do, so you see this? I'm going to change the name so that when it creates a new variable from the previous variable, it's going to change when it changes the 1 to 6, I want to know where it did it. That when it changed, that 1 became a 6, it's, that's a reverse scored item. That's why that's different. So how do we get that 1 to become a 6? And that 2 to become a 5, etc. Well, we go into system missing. If it's a missing item, it should stay a missing item. Okay. Or system or user missing should become system missing, and zeros, right? Zeros should be zeros. All right, now values, 1 should become a 6, assuming it's a 6-point scale. And I think I had you use 6-point scales throughout.
Correct. Yes.
All right, what goes next?
2, 5. 3, 4.
Now what? Are we done? We're not done.
You're 0, 0.
Become a 3. 5 has to become a
2.
And 6
has become a 1.
Yep. Now it opened the output just to show me that it did it. Output, if I can get to I think. Or maybe I put it way up there. I don't know. All right. So where'd it go?
I don't know.
It's a good question. It will put any new variables to the very far right. So
So just
journal,
add it over there.
this was a reverse scored item.
Mm-hmm.
It changed ones to sixes, sixes to ones. You get the deal. And we've got a little decimal issue here. I would get rid of that, but no big deal. Zeros became zeros, or missing became missing still. And then if you wanted, you could actually drag this
All the way over to next to it.
next to it. All right. And then let's say that now journal field, these 5 that I've just clicked on, they add up. After this is reverse scored, they should be averaged to represent, let's call it tenacity, right? These 5 things, and that's not the truth. I'm picking 5 random items from your survey. But depending on where they actually came from, we would add them together. We would not add them, we would average them, or typically. It just depends. So let's say we did that. By the way, I can undo everything we're doing right now. I just want you to know that. So
Yeah.
transform, we're going to compute a variable here. And I called it tenacity, right? And let's say
Correct.
this was tenacity scale, right? And we know that journal field R is in it. All right, now I'm going to do something here. I'm going to you can do this by clicking the little buttons or just put in the plus. You got to be careful. You noticed I thought I clicked that, I didn't. So these are the 5 that I hypothetically said represent tenacity. How do I get them averaged?
Mean, median, and mode.
Well, I can just, I could use my divide symbol, or I can just type it.
Oh, I'm looking on the right-hand side.
How many instruments were there? Or sorry, how many items were there to represent tenacity? Right? Let's say there were 5. These
Okay.
5 I pointed out, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Correct. Yeah.
But now we're going to create a brand new variable. It's going to go at the very right side of the entire data set. And it's going to be these 5, whatever people answered in response to these 5 items after we reverse scored properly. And which I did hypothetically, I just made up a scenario.
Right.
We're going to divide it by the number of items. And then we're going to click OK. And typically, it may just be, I have a different output box open. Yeah. So now we have tenacity scores. Instead of really instruments, we're not meant to have individual item level evaluation to understand. So like if we were looking at personality, we wouldn't want to understand how you answered one question. Are you happy most of the time? We'd want to look at agreeableness or optimism or ocean, openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism, if it was the big five we were using. So we wouldn't use just one item because a single item should not, I mean, you got to be careful with, because really what you want with giving anybody a survey, you want them to answer multiple questions and formulate how in this case, how tenacious they are, not based on one answer, but on at least 3 items put to averaged or summed. And then normally we use summing if we're looking at like an APA diagnosis of like, did they reach the threshold of being depressed or the threshold of being something. Maybe APA diagnosis, not the best example, but here we have tenacity scores, which I made up. But you see how we created this variable, and based on what instruments you have, you're going to find the items that need to be added together. I could write this. Well, that did not work well.
Why don't you just say it in the video?
Well, I wanted to capture it too.
Oh, okay.
So
What was that? Oh, the variable 1, 2, 3.
one, so I'm really just saying one. First, we want to, clean.
Because
The one, so we just want to make this really huge. Now it will let me type all I want. Well, a lot more. Clean data. All right, so reverse what should be reversed. 3, compute variables. Are you drinking wine on my video?
it wouldn't have been noticeable unless you said something.
Compute variables by averaging appropriate compute the variables by averaging the items. So there's a lot of steps to doing this. And then if we really wanted to, I would leave this here if it were actually useful. I would leave this here and leave all the variables way over here. We could move it right next to where the tenacity items were. It just depends on how you want to organize your data set. But you've got a lot of work to do to clean all this. I don't see a problem, but apart from this person that skipped 15, I think I counted 15 items. See, and it doesn't mean you throw out the data. You probably just keep whatever data they did give you and make sure it looks good. And just understand that you're going to have one less person on these items and the variables they represent. So
we're still when we do the variables, when we do the average, it's still going to average that blank, that missing, that 0 with that. So if there was 20, but 19 people answered, you're still going to divide of those 20.
It's not counting the blank as a 0.
Okay.
That's a good question, though.
Thanks. Better recognize.
I would double check that because I don't remember. It's been a while. So if the other, see, compare these two cases. Let's say these were 4 instruments on the same, 4 items on the same instrument. And it's been 18 took it. And we divided by 4 and they had a higher score, obviously, than this person. I assume, I'm pretty sure that, well, okay. It would look, this could be, this doesn't mean they're lower on whatever. Let's say this is tenacity. This person is not necessarily lower on tenacity, except that they do have a 2 instead of a 5. So they probably are, but it's going to look a lot lower if we divide this when we're computing the variable. Tenacity based off of these 4 items. If we divide 4 here and 4 here, then obviously dividing this by 4 is going to be, it's going to overemphasize how low this person was in tenacity when actually they may have just forgotten or skipped this item accidentally. So it's going to inflate how low they were. Right? So they shouldn't be compared equally. This person should actually be have their answers put. I don't know that, I don't know. I'd have to run a check to see if what SPSS did with, let's call this participant 19's data, if you computed this, divided it by 4, I think it's gonna overinflate how low that is, how low they are.
Because it's gonna include that.
It's gonna say when it really should be divided by 3 for that person.
3.
That's why we
That's
have
where my question was.
This is why we have something called imputation. And to impute data is to guess at what the answer would have been in a logical way, a rational way. And this is used by statisticians. It's not something I'm making up. I don't make up words like imputation because that would never occur to me. So what would we do here? Well, we can see that 6, 2, and 2 is 10, right? 10 divided by 3 is 3.33. So we can take the average of the other 3 items that represent the instrument, and we can put that as 3.3. Sorry. And just put a lot of 3s so it doesn't have a big rounding error. And those 0.33s are showing still. I mean, they're actually in the system, even though it's not.
Right.
In fact, we can look here and see that up here.
Oh, yeah.
So,
when you have like Excel.
If we imputed all the data where there's a missing data point like this, which I'm going to undo for now, because we have no idea if these are, I really doubt these are 4 items on the same instrument. I would be very lucky if that was the case. But you want to check for that. See if you need to impute, and then don't divide everything by 4 and have overinflated or misaveraged, basically inappropriately averaged representations of a variable based on, if we didn't impute this, then we've got 3 numbers being divided by 4 instead of 4. And that's obviously going to be a lower average, right? But if we did impute this with the proper, if we were using these 3 other numbers on the same instrument, and that'd be 10. 10 divided by 3 is 3.33 repeating. So we would put that average here, 3.33333, right? And then we could compute the variables once all of our missing data points were imputed.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
that does make sense.
Oh, I'm going to get rid of that because that was made up. What did we do first? We talked about gender being, we changed it from male, female, prefer not to say, from 1.
2
we
and
made
3.
1 male. We put 1 in the place of male. We put 2 in the place of female. We put 3 in the place of
not say.
Prefer not to say or other. There were no others. But we put in the values for those by
How did
clicking.
you get to that screen? Where did you click?
Well, let me finish this sentence. We used the plus button and we put in 1 male, 2 female, 3 prefer not to say. And to get back to the other screen, I click on 3 to do that. Or I click up here if I want to go back to the under the hood again. So I'm just clicking on the far left column, that's the numbers, to get to the outside, so to speak, the data set. And if I want to look under the hood, I click on any of the variable names, or I can click variable view.
Okay. Sweet.
So we put this in. We changed a lot of them from scale to nominal, but we need to be careful.
Sure.
We can't change until we change race and replace whatever black with 1, white with 2, etc.
Right. You can't keep
this to
the numeric,
or it'll delete it from the data set. We can always paste it in from the Excel document, but that's annoying and hard.
Yeah.
So then
I like your way better.
Once you do change them to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, however many races are included in your sample, want to start putting in the values. Then you can have the same experience with race, to where it'll look like what gender does here. You can see, okay, what is 3 again? Oh, prefer not to
say. Yeah.
And
we only had one that did that.
One we suggested, and it may seem white supremacist to put white as 1, but white is just based on census data. It's going to be the most common.
Caucasian.
I don't know the current, white, Caucasian. Black is probably, for now, Hispanic, Latino in the next 20, 30 years will be the highest proportion of the population, probably. And these are sort of in the order of, actually multiracial is probably way up here too. So just put them in a rational order. I was being a little, I was being a little silly about the equity discussion earlier, obviously, but one thing you do want to do is, it doesn't really matter if you put them, you could put Asian first, or, whatever color you are, put that first. I don't care. It doesn't matter. They're just numbers. And that's the truth. We're not saying white is number 1 or females are number 2 compared to number 1 males. It has nothing to do with, it's not an ordinal variable. These are nominal, categorical group numbers that represent group names. That's all they are. And we're doing that so we could, if we wanted, we can't even do an average with these numbers. They're not averageable. I mean, we could, it would be meaningless. to take the average race in terms of numbers. It'd be ridiculous and stupid. But put them in an order, and it is good. You don't necessarily want to put this down here into the document, the legend.
Yes, yeah.
You need to keep it somewhere, and here's just fine for now. And I think generally I did put it in probably the order of demographic representation within the US Census.
Right.
It's sort of awkward because I would consider it's just weird because technically 4 and 6 are overlapping, but you're not going to worry about that too much. That's something you could mention in the demographic section of your chapter 4.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, technically, Native Hawaiian or especially Asian Pacific Islanders could also overlap with Asian. Multiracial is going to overlap with almost everything. So, like we're not trying to, this paper's not about race.
Right.
That's all be all. We're trying to understand who took our survey. And like if it was all white people, which it's not, but if it were, you'd want to represent that data appropriately and tell everybody in a journal article later, well, this was 98% white people that took this survey about the train derailment in whatever it's called, Ohio, that just happened. I forget what it's called. That little town that's almost completely white, low socioeconomic status. The trail derailment with the waste dump explosion thing that just happened. That's a largely sort of Trump voting type of area. And that would be natural if we surveyed people about their fear or their how happy they are, their satisfaction with the government response. They'd probably be a lot of white people, 98%, I'm guessing. I'm making that number up. A lot of white people with the 10 days it took to respond. I think, I don't know if it's been exactly, it could have been 8, but it was more than a week. We were watching a potential spy balloon float across the US instead of paying attention to these people. We're still telling them to this day, at least last I heard, drink the water. Don't worry about the fish that are all dead, that are in the water. The water's perfectly drinkable. These white people in this case, that just happens to be who's there, they would be saying, oh, we don't really we're not very pleased, right? So
Right.
always present who it is. And if you're race baiting, trying to make a racial study, and race baiting and making a racial study is not the same, but sometimes you just study race because it's interesting how people act, and politicians and pollsters do this all the time. They want to know, because a lot of times people from the same culture will vote in similar ways. Such as Joe Biden recently saying, if you ain't black, or if you ain't voting for me, you ain't black, or something like that. So he's assuming black people are a monolith, that they all vote homogeneously, all the same, because if they're that skin color, they should be Democrats and should vote for him. Well, that was a pretty cocky or confident type of statement that probably turned some people off. But it is interesting to study the trends within cultures. I don't fault him for that. I do fault him for his tact. That being said, there's plenty of politicians. In fact, I'd say 99% of them lack tact, if not 100%. So going into that, we want to gather these demographics. We want to gather, this is all demographic information. Are we really concerned with what degree they had? No, but we want to per sample. What does degree tell us? What's really going on there? Well, it does tell us, because this is an educational type of study you're doing, but you're also getting sort of a socioeconomic status flavor here, right?
I
In
like the
other
way you
words,
said that.
you're getting an idea of how much money they may make. We don't know for sure that this exactly represents, but if they got a doctorate degree, they likely have a higher socioeconomic status than trade school. Now, plenty of welders, pipeline people make amazing, and probably more than I do by far. But it's just sort of a generalization that you can trust on average. So anyway, I've talked way too much. Any questions? I was just trying to go back through, what did we cover before we started? And we fixed any sort of issues. I put the participant numbers in there. We fixed some issues that we had with number of courses taken. There were a lot that were like 12 to 14. We chose the highest number every time. So whatever you're going to do as you interpret the human element of the data that you have, when they write in none, you put 0. When they write in 10 to 12, you've just got to have a consistent procedure for
The highest number.
consistent and logical procedure for what to do with when they give a range instead of just a single number, I'd say like we wish they would have. But who remembers how many courses they took? I don't know. If I hadn't Googled it, I wouldn't have known the average number of courses in the master's. We chose to use 20. And there are one person said, I got a master's in business. It was 24 hours or 24 courses, I think.
Right.
So things like that. You just want to consistently deal with them. Just like when you impute data, you want to do it in a consistent way. So the next thing to look at are, hold on. And I probably should have put missing data patterns. Strange data patterns. You might want to get rid of those. You might not want to include that person's strange data if it seems false or like they didn't put thought into it. If I answered 6 across the board,
That's false.
I'm probably not paying attention. And
Correct.
so that data might be useless or questionable, which means you may not want to include it. Strange data patterns. We talked about reverse scored items. Missing data, computing variables. Going to go ahead and get rid of, well, I thought I was. Yeah, going to clear that. And also going to clear this fake reverse scored item. Okay. Just to get you back to sort of 0. But one thing I'd do next is look for any strange answers. Course, I don't remember what course reg, but
registered, but did not start. The courses you registered for, but did not start.
I would check this particular answer in your Qualtrics and say, really?
Which that's the very beginning, right?
Yeah, that's
Normal.
number 8, but understand the rows are changing when we move things around, and we deleted a row that was like informational text from the survey platform. So the point is 60. If I could bold that for you, I don't think I can. I would make a note to check this 60. Any strange answers, you're like, really? They say they're 150 years old? That's about like saying, oh yeah, I registered for 60 courses and didn't start it. I guarantee that's a false answer. I mean, I'm
Right.
99% sure. So probably what you'd want to do if they don't have, if you did transfer this correctly, and this is what they actually wrote, you'd want to change this to a blank like that. Right?
Right.
Then you want to go through and just go through each row and make sure you don't see any sort of strange patterns.
Like 666 or 1 or 123.
Like where it's a lot of repetition of the exact same number. I wish I could, I mean, I don't want to find one, but I mean, have you ever taken a survey that you didn't want to take?
Yeah. Army all the time.
Yeah. And what did you do? You either got, you were feeling a little creative, so you did A, B, C, D, C, B, A, B, C, D, which I call Christmas treeing because it makes that Christmas tree shape. Or when you don't know to a test, you do the same thing, or you just put C down the board. Or if you don't want to take the survey, you put 6 or 1 or whatever, or you just randomly. And that really screws with people's data when you randomly try to make it look like you did put thought into it. Because then they take it and they don't keep your data out of the sample, and it skews, the actual validity, it messes up decreases the validity of their findings because they included your data when you were just randomly clicking your way through the survey, right?
Right.
So it's actually kinder to a researcher just to click 6s down the board. If you're not going to pay attention, make it obvious. But you need to go through and check. So here's some 1s in a row, but I'm not seeing a big long string of any, just eyeballing it. My eyes are tired, but I'm not seeing any big long strings of somebody answering. But again, this would be something that we would do off video, and just go through and say, okay, are they varying their answers? And yes,
that one has an interesting pattern. Go back to the left. 5, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. A lot of 5s and 1s. Or am I just dreaming?
yeah, it was a lot of 5s and 1s, but then they don't stick with it. So I would feel compelled to believe that they were actually answering the questions.
Gotcha. Okay.
I mean, honestly, let me just show you an example real quick. I know we're probably past the time that you expected. I apologize for that.
That's cool.
But let's say there was 186. I don't care what his age was. But let's say this person, I'll call him a he. That person is not paying attention.
Right, yeah.
Can we tell?
Because they're all 6s.
All right, let's consider a different person. And you almost pointed out one that could have potentially been one.
Mm-hmm. Same pattern is what we're seeing. 5115.
Or
Christmas tree.
Or just you don't want patterns. Answers to your survey should be somewhat random. They should not follow a pattern. So if it follows a pattern, you need to be a little suspicious. And they should follow a logical pattern. But assuming you didn't ask your questions in a descending order of agreement where, you're like
Which no, we didn't.
you're asking them to rate houses, and you've shown them pictures of the biggest house first, getting smaller and smaller and less nice, then of course you'd expect the score to go down, based on
what's true. Yeah.
That's a logical response. But these are not hopefully worded in a way that you'd expect that steady decline. So anytime you see a strange pattern, just investigate. You don't have to be Nancy Drew, Hardy Boys, whatever you're into. Maybe you don't even know those people, but I think you probably do. Some younger people, they're like teenage investigators from old school books. Anyway, anytime you see a strange pattern, you just want to look into it. And honestly, I'm pretty impressed that nothing is sticking out just real obviously.
Right, which makes it more
even the person
that we need to look at it.
The person that did, was like actually really nice about it. I mean, the best case scenario for somebody that
I didn't realize the survey was gonna be this long or something like that.
Yeah, I didn't realize the survey was going to be this long. Sorry.
Right.
I mean, and even this person, you might want to check on this person. How did they answer thoughtfully? Well, yeah, but
yeah. Confusing wording. Okay.
So you want to take a look at any of this. You're getting a little praise here, a little personal statements. And these are a lot of, because I shared some of this on your behalf, maybe. And some of these people are like, hey, you're one of us, good for you.
Thank you. It's all because of you.
No, I'm not trying to claim any of that. I'm just trying to say.
No. That's not what I meant. What does it say?
This person has a lot of thoughts to share. And, if we were doing a mixed method study, we'd want to find that person and interview them, like they've got a lot on their mind, especially if what this says is as interesting as it appears from jump. So this was just some ideas for things to do next. Obviously, data patterns would go up here with cleaning data. Before you reverse anything, you want to make sure all the numbers are perfect. And then you reverse. So actually 4 and 5, as I have them. Actually, I'll paste that back.
Because missing and strange and clean goes along with each other.
Right. These are all part of cleaning.
So
2, 3, 4, 5. So you get the deal. I know we did a lot, but I wanted to give you a big shove, not a shove, a big head start into things you can do without me. And I'll be available. I'm going to stop the recording. Anybody that watched, sorry I'm tired, but I recorded it so that maybe it would help you a little bit. So I also appreciate Chad for sharing. So give him a pat on the back next time you see him, and some money. Give him some money and some Italian food, because we're all hungry for Italian food now. Anyway, peace. I'm gonna stop the recording, assuming I started it. Yep, I did.